Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. I never thought I'd be embroiled in a property dispute with my neighbor, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. My name's Jack, and I've lived in my current home for over 15 years. It's a modest ranch-style house on a decent-sized lot, backing up to a small wooded area with a stream running through it. That stream has always been one of my favorite features of the property. The peaceful sound of running water, the wildlife it attracts, it's just so serene. My next-door neighbor, let's call him Bob, moved in about 5 years ago. At first, things were fine between us. We'd chat over the fence, exchange pleasantries, that sort of thing. But over time, Bob started to get a bit pushy. He'd make comments about how my lawn care wasn't up to his standards or how my old pickup truck parked in the driveway was an eyesore. I mostly brushed it off, figuring it wasn't worth getting into arguments over. Then came the day that changed everything. I got home from work one evening to find a brand new chain-link fence stretching across my backyard, right through the middle of the stream. I was stunned. Who would do something like that without even talking to me first? I marched over to Bob's house and knocked on the door. When he answered, I tried to keep my cool. "Hey Bob, what's the deal with that new fence back there?" I asked, gesturing towards my yard. Bob puffed out his chest. "Oh, that? Yeah, I had that put in today. Looks great, doesn't it? Really improves the property values around here." I took a deep breath. "Bob, that fence is on my property. It's cutting right through my stream. You can't just put up a fence wherever you want." Bob scoffed. "Your property? That stream is the property line. I had a survey done and everything. The fence is entirely on my side." I was flabbergasted. "What are you talking about? I've owned this place for 15 years. The property line is a good 20 feet past the stream on my side. You need to take that fence down immediately." Bob's face turned red. "I'm not taking down anything. I know my rights. That stream is the boundary and I can do what I want on my side. If you've got a problem with it, take it up with my lawyer." With that, he slammed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, seething. Who did this guy think he was? I went back to my house and dug through my files, looking for my property deed and survey documents from when I bought the place. After some searching, I found them and confirmed what I already knew. The stream was well within my property line. Bob's new fence was a clear encroachment. The next day, I took off work early and went down to the county records office. I wanted to double-check the official property records and see if anything had changed. The clerk was helpful and pulled up all the relevant documents. Sure enough, my property line extended well past the stream, just as I remembered. "Has there been any change to these boundaries recently?" I asked the clerk. She shook her head. "No, sir. These property lines have been the same since the subdivision was originally plotted back in the 70s. No changes on record." I thanked her and left, my mind racing. What was Bob playing at? He claimed to have had a survey done, but the official records clearly showed he was wrong. I decided it was time to get some legal help. I called up a local real estate attorney, explained the situation, and set up a consultation for the next day. The lawyer, Janet, listened carefully as I laid out all the details. "Well, based on what you're telling me, it sounds like your neighbor is clearly in the wrong here," Janet said. "The property records are pretty definitive, but we'll need to tread carefully. Property disputes between neighbors can get ugly fast." I nodded. "So what do you think we should do?" Janet thought for a moment. "First, let's send a formal letter laying out the facts and requesting that he remove the fence within 30 days. We'll include copies of the relevant property records. If he refuses or ignores it, we can escalate to legal action." "Sounds good," I agreed. "Let's do it." Janet drafted up the letter and I hand-delivered it to Bob's house that evening. He answered the door with a scowl. "What's this?" he demanded as I handed him the envelope. "It's a formal request for you to remove the fence you illegally constructed on my property," I replied calmly. "I've included copies of the official property records showing the correct boundaries. You have 30 days to take it down, or we'll be forced to take further action." Bob's face turned beet red. "This is ridiculous. I told you, I had a survey done. That stream is the property line." I shrugged. "Well, your survey must have been wrong. The official records are clear. Take a look for yourself." Bob snatched the envelope from my hand. "This isn't over," he snarled before slamming the door. I walked back to my house, hoping that would be the end of it. But deep down, I had a feeling things were just getting started. Over the next few weeks, Bob seemed to go out of his way to be as annoying as possible. He'd mow his lawn at 7 a.m. on Saturdays, blasting music the whole time. He started having loud parties that went late into the night. It was clear he was trying to get under my skin. But I didn't rise to the bait. I documented everything, took videos of the noise, kept a log of all the disturbances. I figured it might come in handy later if things escalated. As the 30-day deadline approached, there was no sign of Bob removing the fence. If anything, he seemed to be doubling down. He installed some tacky lawn ornaments right along the fence line, clearly visible from my property. On day 31, with the fence still standing, I called Janet to update her. "All right," she said. "I was afraid it might come to this. I think our next step is to file for an injunction to force him to remove the fence. We've got a rock-solid case based on the property records." I agreed and Janet got to work on the legal filings. A few days later, Bob was served with papers notifying him of the lawsuit and upcoming court date. That evening, there was a pounding on my front door. I opened it to find Bob, red-faced and waving the legal documents. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. "You're suing me now? Over a damn fence?" I stayed calm. "Bob, I gave you every opportunity to do the right thing here. The fence is illegal and you know it. I'm just protecting my property rights." Bob jabbed a finger at my chest. "You listen here. I'm not some pushover you can bully. I've got money and I've got lawyers. You want to fight? You've got one." With that, he stormed off. I sighed, knowing this was going to get a lot worse before it got better. Over the next few weeks, as we waited for our court date, Bob's antics escalated. He started parking his cars right up against the fence line, mere inches from the stream. He installed bright floodlights that shone directly into my backyard. It was clear he was trying to make my life miserable. But I stayed the course, continuing to document everything and keeping Janet updated. She assured me we had a solid case and just needed to let the legal process play out. Finally, our day in court arrived. Janet and I showed up early, armed with all our documentation and property records. Bob swaggered in with a slick-looking lawyer in an expensive suit. The judge called the courtroom to order and asked us to present our cases. Janet laid out the facts clearly and concisely, showing the property records and survey maps that clearly demonstrated the stream and surrounding land belonged to me. When it was Bob's turn, his lawyer tried to muddy the waters with a lot of legal jargon about adverse possession and easements, but the judge wasn't having it. "Counselor," the judge interrupted, "I'm not seeing any evidence that supports your client's claim here. The property records are quite clear." Bob's lawyer fumbled for a response. "Well, Your Honor, my client had a survey done that showed." The judge cut him off again. "Do you have a copy of this survey? Was it filed with the county?" The lawyer hesitated. "Well, no, Your Honor, but my client assures me." "Enough," the judge said firmly. "Unless you have some actual evidence to present, I'm prepared to rule." Bob's lawyer fell silent, and the judge turned to us. "Based on the evidence presented, it's clear that the defendant has illegally constructed a fence on the plaintiff's property. I'm granting an injunction ordering the immediate removal of the fence. Defendant will bear all costs for removal and any necessary landscaping to restore the area to its previous state." I breathed a sigh of relief. Janet squeezed my arm and whispered, "We did it." Bob and his lawyer huddled together, whispering furiously. Then Bob approached the bench. "Your Honor," he said, his voice strained, "I'd like to request 30 days to comply with the order. I'll need time to arrange for the fence removal." The judge considered for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. You have 30 days from today to remove the fence and restore the property. Failure to comply will result in contempt charges. Do you understand?" Bob nodded stiffly. "Yes, Your Honor." As we left the courtroom, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. But I knew this wasn't over yet. The next few weeks were tense. Bob glared at me anytime we crossed paths, but didn't say a word. I noticed a few workmen coming and going from his property, but the fence remained standing as the 30-day deadline approached. On the morning of day 30, I woke up early, curious to see if Bob would actually comply. To my surprise, I heard the sound of machinery coming from the backyard. I looked out to see a small crew dismantling the fence piece by piece. I watched from my kitchen window as they worked throughout the day. By late afternoon, the fence was completely gone. The crew then brought in some equipment to grade the disturbed soil and plant grass seed. As the workers were packing up, I decided to head outside and take a closer look. As I approached the stream, I saw Bob standing on his side, watching me with a scowl. "Happy now?" he spat. I shrugged. "I'm just glad things are back the way they should be." Bob snorted. "Yeah, well, don't think this is over. I'm not done with you yet." I sighed. "Bob, come on. This doesn't have to be a war between us. We're neighbors. Why can't we just—" "Save it," Bob interrupted. "I don't want to hear it. You haven't seen the last of me." With that, he turned and stormed back to his house. I shook my head, wondering if things would ever be peaceful between us. Over the next few months, things were relatively quiet. Bob kept to himself, and I did the same. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was planning something. My suspicions were confirmed one Saturday morning when I heard the sound of heavy machinery coming from Bob's property. I looked out to see a large excavator digging a deep trench along our shared property line, just feet from the stream. Alarmed, I hurried outside. "Bob," I called out, "what's going on here?" Bob emerged from his garage with a smug grin. "Oh, just some landscaping work. Putting in a French drain system. Got to protect my property from water damage, you know." I frowned. "Awful close to the stream, isn't it? You sure that's legal?" Bob's grin widened. "Oh, it's perfectly legal. I made sure of that. In fact, why don't you call your lawyer friend and check? I'm sure she'd love to bill you for a few more hours." With that, he turned and went back inside, leaving me standing there confused and worried. I did end up calling Janet, who looked into the situation. "Well," she said after doing some research, "technically, he's within his rights to install drainage on his property. As long as he's not directly altering the stream or violating any local ordinances, there's not much we can do." I sighed. "So he's found a loophole to mess with me." "It seems that way," Janet agreed. "But don't worry, we'll keep a close eye on things. If he steps over the line, we'll be ready." Over the next few weeks, Bob's landscaping project continued. The trench got deeper and longer, running the entire length of our shared property line. I noticed the stream's flow seemed to be affected, with more water being diverted into Bob's elaborate drain system. I documented everything, taking photos and videos, and kept Janet updated. She advised me to also contact the local Environmental Protection Office, as there might be concerns about the impact on the stream ecosystem. An environmental inspector came out to take a look. He frowned as he surveyed Bob's work. "This is concerning," the inspector said. "While he's not directly modifying the stream, this drainage system is clearly impacting the natural water flow. I'm going to have to write this up and possibly issue a citation." I thanked the inspector, feeling a small sense of victory, but I knew Bob wouldn't take this lying down. Sure enough, later that evening, Bob came pounding on my door. "You called the environmental office on me?" he shouted as soon as I opened the door. "You just can't mind your own business, can you?" I held up my hands. "Bob, your project is affecting the stream. That's not just your business. It's mine too, and frankly, it's everyone's business. That stream is part of the local ecosystem." Bob sneered. "Oh, so now you're some tree-hugging environmentalist? Give me a break. You're just mad because I found a way to do what I want without breaking your precious property laws." I shook my head. "This isn't about winning or losing, Bob. It's about doing what's right. That stream has been here longer than either of us. We should be protecting it, not exploiting loopholes to damage it." For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something, doubt, shame, in Bob's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by his usual anger. "Save your lectures," he spat. "I don't need you or anyone else telling me what I can do on my own property." As he stormed off, I couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and sadness. How had things gotten so bad between us? The next few weeks were a flurry of activity. The environmental office issued Bob a citation and ordered him to modify his drainage system to reduce its impact on the stream. Bob, predictably, appealed the decision, leading to more inspections and legal back and forth. Meanwhile, I noticed other neighbors starting to take an interest in the situation. Many of them enjoyed the stream and the wildlife it attracted, and they were concerned about Bob's actions affecting the local environment. One evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sarah, who lived a few houses down, standing there with a determined look on her face. "Jack," she said, "we need to talk about Bob and what he's doing to the stream. A bunch of us neighbors are getting together to discuss it. We'd like you to join us." I was surprised but grateful for the support. "Of course," I replied. "When and where?" The meeting was held at Sarah's house the following evening. About a dozen neighbors showed up, all concerned about Bob's actions and the potential environmental impact. "We've all enjoyed that stream for years," said Tom, an elderly gentleman who'd lived in the neighborhood even longer than I had. "It's not right for one person to come in and start messing with nature like this." There were murmurs of agreement around the room. "So what can we do?" asked Lisa, a young mom who often took her kids to play by the stream. I shared what I knew about the legal situation and the environmental office's involvement. "The best thing we can do right now is keep documenting everything and reporting any violations to the proper authorities," I explained. Sarah nodded. "We should also consider reaching out to local environmental groups. They might be able to help put pressure on Bob to do the right thing." We spent the next hour brainstorming ideas and making plans. By the end of the meeting, we had formed a neighborhood committee dedicated to protecting the stream and holding Bob accountable. As I walked home that night, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about my property rights anymore. It was about protecting something that belonged to all of us. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Our neighborhood committee got to work, reaching out to local environmental groups, attending city council meetings, and keeping a close eye on Bob's activities. We managed to get some local media attention, with a reporter coming out to do a story on the stream and the threat it was facing. Seeing his actions publicized seemed to rattle Bob, who became increasingly defensive and isolated. The environmental office continued to monitor the situation closely, conducting regular inspections and issuing additional citations when Bob failed to comply with their orders. Through it all, I tried to maintain a level head. Despite Bob's hostility, I still held out hope that we might be able to resolve things amicably. One Saturday morning, I was out in my backyard, enjoying my coffee and the sound of the stream, when I saw Bob emerge from his house. He stood at the edge of his property, staring at the water with an unreadable expression. Taking a deep breath, I decided to try one more time to extend an olive branch. I walked over to where he was standing. "Morning, Bob," I said cautiously. He grunted in response but didn't look at me. "Look," I continued, "I know things have been rough between us, but it doesn't have to be this way. This stream, it's something special, something worth preserving. Don't you think?" For a long moment, Bob said nothing. Then, to my surprise, he sighed heavily. "You know," he said, still staring at the water, "when I was a kid, there was a stream like this near my house. Used to spend hours there, catching frogs and building little dams. It was a good place." I nodded, encouraged by this unexpected moment of vulnerability. "What happened to it?" I asked gently. Bob's jaw tightened. Progress happened. Some developer bought the land, filled in the stream, built a bunch of cookie-cutter houses. Just like that, it was gone. Suddenly, a lot of things started to make sense. "Is that why you've been so adamant about controlling the stream here?" I asked. "You're afraid of losing it?" Bob finally turned to look at me, his expression a mix of anger and something that might have been shame. I thought if I controlled it, I could protect it, in my own way, but I guess I just ended up being the thing I hated. I took a risk and put a hand on his shoulder. To my surprise, he didn't shrug it off. "It's not too late, Bob," I said. "We can still protect this stream, together, the right way." Bob was quiet for a long moment, then gave a small nod. Maybe you're right." From that day on, things began to change. It wasn't an overnight transformation. Bob had a lot of pride to swallow and a lot of damage to undo. But slowly, surely, he began to work with us instead of against us. He modified his drainage system to be more environmentally friendly, working closely with the environmental office to ensure it didn't negatively impact the stream. He even joined our neighborhood committee, bringing his considerable energy and resources to our conservation efforts. Over time, the hostility between us faded, replaced by a cautious friendship. We'd often find ourselves standing by the stream together, talking about our plans to protect and enhance the local ecosystem. One year after the fence incident, we organized a neighborhood stream cleanup day. Dozens of residents showed up, including Bob, who worked tirelessly alongside everyone else to remove trash and invasive plants. As the day wound down, Bob approached me, looking somewhat awkward. "Listen, Jack," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I owe you an apology. For everything. You were right all along. And I was an ass." I smiled and extended my hand. "Water under the bridge, Bob, or should I say, water in the stream?" He chuckled and shook my hand firmly. "You know, that stream of ours, it's pretty special. I'm glad we're protecting it together." As we stood there, watching the clear water flow past, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. We'd not only preserved a beautiful natural resource, but we'd also built a stronger community in the process. The fence that once divided us was long gone, replaced by a shared commitment to stewardship, and in the end, that was worth far more than any property line could define. Update: viewed the story in the same style. It's been 5 years since Bob and I buried the hatchet over the stream dispute. A lot has changed in that time, mostly for the better. Our neighborhood stream protection committee has grown into a well-respected local environmental group. We've successfully lobbied for stricter regulations on development near waterways and organized regular cleanup events. Bob, to everyone's surprise, became one of our most active members. He threw himself into learning about stream ecology and conservation practices. His passion and energy, once directed at conflict, now drove our group forward. But our peace was about to be tested. One crisp fall morning, I was out for my usual walk along the stream when I noticed something odd. There were small orange flags placed at regular intervals along both banks. My stomach dropped as I realized what they likely meant. Someone was planning to develop the wooded area our stream ran through. I immediately called an emergency meeting of our committee. We gathered that evening at my house, the mood tense and worried. I did some digging, Sarah announced once everyone had arrived. It looks like Mega Core Developments bought up the entire wooded area. They're planning a huge subdivision. A collective groan went up from the group. But how? Bob asked, his face red with anger. I thought we'd gotten those protection regulations passed. Tom, who had connections at City Hall, shook his head sadly. They found a loophole. The regulations only apply to land within city limits. The woods are just outside, in the county's jurisdiction. I felt a mix of frustration and determination. All right, so what do we do? We can't just let them destroy the stream and the woods. We spent the next few hours brainstorming ideas and making plans. By the end of the night, we had a game plan. We'd launch a public awareness campaign, petition the county for emergency protected status for the woods, and look into legal options to challenge the development. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. We printed flyers, organized rallies, and spoke at every public meeting we could. Bob surprised us all by using his business connections to get us airtime on local radio and TV shows. The community response was overwhelming. It seemed like everyone had a connection to the stream and the woods, whether it was childhood memories of exploring or recent family picnics. Our petition gathered thousands of signatures. But Megacorp wasn't going down without a fight. They launched their own PR campaign, promising jobs and economic growth. They hired a team of slick lawyers who argued that the development was perfectly legal and would actually benefit the environment through planned green spaces. The battle raged on for months. We had some victories. The county agreed to pause the development while they reviewed our petition for protected status. But we also had setbacks. Megacorp's lawyers found ways to delay and obstruct at every turn. Just when it seemed like we were at a stalemate, an unexpected ally emerged. Dr. Emily Chen, a biology professor at the local university, reached out to our group. She had been conducting a long-term study of the stream ecosystem and had made a startling discovery. I've identified a population of riverside fairy shrimp in your stream, she explained at our next meeting. They're an endangered species, and this might be one of their last remaining habitats in the state. This was the break we needed. The presence of an endangered species could trigger federal protection for the entire area, but we had to move fast before Megacorp caught wind of it. We worked with Dr. Chen to document the shrimp population and prepare a report for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Bob used his business savvy to keep our activities under wraps, running interference with nosy reporters and Megacorp spies. Finally, after weeks of anxious waiting, we got the news we'd been hoping for. The Fish and Wildlife Service confirmed Dr. Chen's findings and declared the entire wooded area, including our stream, as critical habitat for the riverside fairy shrimp. Megacorp's lawyers tried to fight it, but the federal protection was ironclad. They couldn't touch the woods or the stream without violating the Endangered Species Act. After a few weeks of blustering and threats, they finally threw in the towel and abandoned their development plans. The day we got the official news, we threw a massive celebration by the stream. The whole neighborhood turned out, along with many of the people who had supported our campaign. As I stood there, watching kids play in the water and families enjoying picnics on the bank, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Bob sidled up next to me, grinning from ear to ear. You know, he said, 5 years ago I would have been on Megacorp's side. Funny how things change. I nodded, smiling back. You played a big part in this victory, Bob. We couldn't have done it without you. He shrugged modestly. It was a team effort. But you know, this got me thinking. What's to stop the next Megacorp from trying the same thing? I raised an eyebrow. You have something in mind? Bob's eyes twinkled with excitement. As a matter of fact, I do. What if we set up a land trust? We could buy up the woods ourselves, put it in a conservation easement, protect it permanently. I whistled low. That's a big undertaking. We'd need a lot of money. Leave that to me, Bob said confidently. I've got some ideas for fundraising. Between my business contacts and the community support we've built up, I think we can make it happen. And make it happen we did. Over the next year, Bob led a fundraising campaign that amazed us all. He organized charity auctions, benefit concerts, and even got some big corporate donations from Megacorp's competitors, much to our amusement. It wasn't easy. There were times when it seemed like we'd never reach our goal, but the community rallied behind us, with donations big and small pouring in from all over. Finally, on a bright spring morning 2 years after our battle with Megacorp, we made it official. The woods and the stream were now permanently protected under the Riverside Nature Preserve, owned and managed by our community land trust. As we stood there at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we'd come, from property disputes and legal battles to a united community effort to protect our natural heritage. It was more than I could have ever hoped for. Bob, now the president of our land trust, gave a short speech, This preserve isn't just about protecting a piece of land, he said, his voice thick with emotion. It's about preserving our connection to nature, and to each other. It's a legacy we're leaving for our children, and their children after them. As the crowd cheered, I felt a lump in my throat. I thought about that first confrontation with Bob over the fence, how angry and hopeless I had felt. If someone had told me then that we'd end up here, I would never have believed them. But here we were. The stream flowed on, unchanged and untroubled by human disputes. The trees stood tall, their leaves rustling in the breeze. And all around, I saw the faces of my neighbors, united in purpose and celebration. We had faced down corporate giants, navigated legal labyrinths, and overcome our own differences. In the process, we'd not only saved a precious piece of nature, but we'd also built something just as valuable, a strong, engaged community. As the ceremony wound down and people began to disperse, Bob caught my eye and nodded towards the stream. We walked over together, standing side by side as we watched the clear water flow past. "You know," Bob said after a moment, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you stood up to me all those years ago. If you hadn't, none of this would have happened." I smiled, remembering the long, difficult journey that had brought us to this point. "I'm just glad we found a way to work together in the end. This victory belongs to all of us." Bob nodded, then turned to me with a mischievous grin. "So, what do you say? Ready for our next big project? I hear there's a wetland on the other side of town that could use some protecting." I laughed, shaking my head. Some things never changed, but as I looked out at our preserved woods and the stream that had started it all, I knew I was ready for whatever challenge came next. Together, there was nothing our community couldn't accomplish. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.